I left Iran in September 1980, a year after the revolution and a week before the war with Iraq began. I haven't been back since. You can now place me in the timeline of my country's history. When I left, the new government's emblem was glued over the old regime's lion and sun in my passport. New passports had not been printed yet. The bombings hadn't started either. That is when I left. It's been 30 years now that I've been living away from my homeland. I am an exile. The person, the condition, and the place, complete by myself. I inhabit it and carry it within me. If exile were the army, by now I would be a general like my father. If it were a war, I would be a veteran. And if living in exile were a career, I would be eligible for retirement now with a full pension. But exile is not just a measure of years that you've spent away from your homeland. Time in exile has its own rhythm. There are days, months, and years that fly by so fast they feel stolen from you. On the other hand, there are exile moments that are long enough to persist in your memory an entire lifetime. Exile is what is not there and should be, and what is there and shouldn't be. It is a disarrangement of being and the order of life as it ought to have been. The Sony transistor radio was almost taken away from us at Tehran airport the day we left the country. We had bought it in the Tehran Bazaar in the height of the revolution to listen to the BBC World Service news about Iran. It was bulky and heavy, but it had good reception and would get through most interferences. The revolution was followed closely by the BBC, and in the absence of reliable local news and the chaos that surrounded us, it was our only way of knowing what was happening. A year later, when hordes of people started fleeing the country, harsh limitations were applied to what you could and could not take with you when you left. No antiques, no jewelry, no cash, and no electronics. At the airport, the radio was taken out of our suitcase and confiscated. No electronics. The flight was at 8 in the morning, but we had arrived 4 hours in advance, just in case. A man, a woman, and a 1-year-old child. Considering the complete obscurity into which we were transferring our lives, the transistor radio was an indispensable piece of equipment. It had taken us through a bloody revolution and had convinced us that it was time to leave, that there was nothing left to hope for, and that doors were closing fast. The radio had to be reclaimed. It took 3 hours of intense negotiations and some amateur theatrics to convince the search and rescue guy that we deserved the transistor radio, that it was the only valuable object we were taking out of the country with us, and that it wasn't that valuable after all. I think the customs officer in the hodgepodge uniform saw our resolve and decided on behalf of the nation that a transistor radio could be spared in return for revolutionary purity. Finally, at 8 a.m. that morning, we left the country. A man, a woman, a 1-year-old child with a Sony transistor radio in our suitcase. Exile is a state of being that has developed with time for me. I didn't land in exile when I left my country. It grew into me and around me over the years. In the days that followed the Iranian Revolution, there was a surge of people who needed to leave the country. Western embassies either closed their doors or restricted their visa process. Visa applicants lined up outside embassies with their pillows and blankets and waited in line for days. Those who had to urgently leave Iran had the choice of 3 possible destinations that didn't require a visa. We picked Portugal. One of the early images I have of those years is this photograph taken in Lisbon. It was taken during a walk on Marginal Road. Marginal Road runs along the Atlantic Ocean, south of Lisbon. This is the furthest west you can go in Europe before you'd have to start swimming towards the Americas. This group of people leaning or sitting on the edge of Marginal Road have recently arrived there from Iran. I'm sitting third from the left with my daughter Saba on my lap and my husband Amin to my right. When I look at this photograph with the linear birds on a wire positioning of people and the somber expressions on our faces, I see the emergence of one of the early elements of the landscape of exile in my life, the ocean. We were a group of city dwellers coming from Tehran, a dry and mountainous part of Iran. Living near the ocean wasn't our natural habitat. The backdrop of the ocean pushed our collective experience even further out of context. In the photos that we took on the beaches of Lisbon during the 3 years that we spent there, it's not clear whether we are enjoying a day at the beach or waiting for a delayed ship to embark on an illusory journey. The ocean shouldn't have been there, and the mountains are missing. Been here before. I remember the terracotta roofs, the narrow alleys and the cobblestone roads, the humble and kind people. It was the beginning of time as I know it now, but I didn't know it then. I remember arriving here with Amin and a 1-year-old Saba. It was to be for now, until, because. No clear notion of time or space. Behind us, all had unraveled. We were travelers and our plane had to land. This was the land. A country with a collective history of homesickness. The suspension would go on in my mind. I remember the blue ceramic tiles with images of sea travelers and ships. I remember the ocean, the waves. I remember the shared apartment and the tea box where we kept the collective grocery money. I remember the transistor radio turning on every morning with the news. News of a country and an ongoing war, but also news of my own life. The life I had suspended for now, the life that was going on in a parallel timeline. I remember the daily load of clothes, washed by hand, drying in the sun. The salted dry fish, and the sweet fruits never seen before, bacalhau and neshperish. I remember living in between times with the possibility of going back or going forward, back to a time when life was familiar, or forward to unfamiliar life. Living with an idea of who I was and confused by who I had become. I remember not understanding and not being understood, not being able to count higher than 10 or ask more than simple questions. 1 woman, 2 children, how much, how far, how long? Losing all points of reference, floating like an astronaut in space, weightless. I remember the train rides along the ocean with no destination, the ride itself being the destination, moving from one place to another all day, forward and backward. A place to be in, a window to watch the landscape and the life that was going on outside. On rainy days, I remember the tall waves coming in through the train window, splashing my face. I remember the little hand in my hand and the baby moving in my belly, my Portuguese baby, conceived in suspension, transferring the land of refuge into birthplace. We are no longer guests where we give birth. I've come here to remember.
شکر
açúcar açúcar açúcar
azúcar azúcar
We lived in San Pedro de Estoril the first year, Rua da Murtal. You were a year old when we arrived. We took the train at San Pedro station almost every day. The station has changed very little. One day, the train went on strike. They announced the news on the radio, but we didn't understand. The three of us sat on the bench and waited for the train for hours. First floor, second floor, third floor, fourth floor, fifth floor, sixth floor. We lived in this apartment, Miramar Towers, Carcavelos, near Lisbon. Your sister was 3 and I was pregnant with you. We shared the apartment with your aunt and her family. When my brother and his wife came to visit us from America, we took these pictures on this balcony. But this is not where you were born. When your aunt moved to India with her family, we moved to another apartment. You were born here. Clínica do San Gabriel, 81 Rua Marques da Silva, Lisbon. The pain started in the afternoon. Your dad and I rushed to the hospital. They said we have to wait until the next day. They gave us a room that night. You were born at 11:30 the next day. I could hear your Baba's voice as I was waking up after the operation. Wake up, it's a boy. They gave me a room on the first floor with a door that opened to the garden. We were there for a week, you and I. They've removed the sign and the building seems abandoned. But I know it was here. I showed it to you on Google Map. Clínica de San Gabriel. موقع ما توی خونه مارتینش زندگی میکردیم. از خونه کارکاولوش رفته بودیم. خونه مارتینش یه آپارتمان کوچیکی بود، 2 اتاق خواب داشت. اون موقع ما شاید حدود 12 نفر بودیم تو اون خونه زندگی میکردیم. هر خانواده‌ای به یه طرفی قرار بود بره، ولی تو اون چند وقت، تو اون چند هفته همه این 3 خانواده و اون پسر همه اونجا زندگی میکردیم تو خونه مارتینش. بعد از اینکه تو به دنیا آمدی یه روز بابا با قطار رفت مادرید که از سفارت ایران تو اسپانیا برات شناسنامه بگیره و اسم تو بذاره تو پاسپورت من.
چرا سفارت ایران؟
خب گواهی تولد پرتغالی که کافی نبود. ما اون موقع پاسپورت ایرانی داشتیم و فکر میکردیم اگه بخوایم سفر کنیم باید تو هم شناسنامه ایرانی داشته باشی.
فکر میکردیم برمیگردیم ایران؟
آره، اصلا نمیدونستیم چی میشه، اما فکر برگشتن به ایران هم میکردیم.
تا کی فکر میکردیم برمیگردیم؟
تا سالها. کانادا هم که اومدیم هنوز بهش فکر میکردیم.
فکر میکردیم برمیگردیم؟
فکر میکردیم میتونیم بریم دیدن حداقل، حالا دائمی هم که نباشه.
کی فهمیدیم دیگه برنمیگردیم؟
کی فهمیدیم دیگه برنمیگردیم؟ سالها طول کشید. درست یادم نمیاد، زمان خاصی نبود، به تدریج فهمیدیم.
چی شد که فهمیدیم؟
خیلی چیزا باید پیش می آمد تا می فهمیدیم دیگه نمیشه برگشت، یعنی دیگه نمیتونیم برگردیم.
دیروز بابا میگفت اگه میدونست بیاد بیرون دیگه برنمیگرده نمیومد.
درسته.
تو چی؟
نمیدونم، شاید اگه اون موقع میدونستم برنمیگردم میترسیدم بیام بیرون، اما تو این سالا بارها فکر کردم اگه اون موقع نیامده بودم 1000 بار دیگه از هر راهی که بود فرار کرده بودم. تازه ما شانس آوردیم جزو آخرین کسایی بودیم که با هواپیما در اومدیم. یه هفته بعد از اینکه ما آمدیم جنگ شروع شد و فرودگاه رو بستن.
پس بقیه چجوری در اومدن؟
داستانش طولانیه، حالا پاشو بریم یه چیزی بخوریم.
اوکی.
شکر.
sucre,
سوکر.
sucre,
سوکر.
sucre,
سوکر.
We lived the first 10 years of exile between the idea of arrival and the idea of return. Staying seemed like a temporary arrangement while waiting to return home. We stayed outside of real time. Real time was left behind when we left home. We stayed to be able to go back and pick up time where we had left it. We waited outside of time and away from familiar spaces. In this suspended state, however, life unbelievably went on as usual. Children were born, they grew up, we took pictures of them, they started school, we moved to other continents, met new people, set up homes, and started new lives. We held birthday parties and attended weddings. People passed away. We moved from one home to another, went on vacations, and appeared in group pictures. From home, we also received pictures of birthday parties, weddings, and family gatherings. Mostly tightly arranged photos of family members, sharply dressed and smiling, standing closely together. As time passed, lives changed, children grew, and names and dates began to appear on the back of photos because we could no longer recognize the faces. Neda is sitting on Aziz's lap. Homan is holding Noman. The boy on Niloufer's lap and the boy standing behind them are Fuad's children. My aunt writes on the back of a photo, "I'm sending you this photo so that one day your daughter will remember her relatives. You may remember me by this photo after I'm gone." And she lists the names of her sons and their children. There are no signs of the ongoing war with Iraq in the photos we received from Iran during those years. Our struggles don't show up in the photos we sent home either. Life in disarray and suspension appears normal in these images. Long-distance calls were expensive at that time, and the internet did not exist. Those were the letter writing and picture sending years. I keep these letters and photos in a special box. The photos have started to fade and the letters are falling apart. The blue ink of the letters is starting to meld with the blue lining of the paper. Stamps have dried and peeled off their envelopes. Parts of envelopes are now stuck to letters and fall apart as I try to take the letters out. Handwriting, paper pattern, envelope, stamp, all merging into one fading document. My grandmother writes in a letter, "Why don't you write more often? Don't you know that without news from you, it is me who lives in exile instead of you?" My father writes, "You yourself who are a photographer, why don't you send more pictures of your children for us so that we can see them grow and don't miss them so much?" But writing letters wasn't an easy thing to do. You had to write about a daily life spent away from and without, explaining what needed to be felt to be understood and could not, in fact, be explained. It forced us to confront and unite our split sense of time and space. Writing letters made it all too real. It pushed us to acknowledge what was not there and should have been, and what was missing was what letter writing was all about. The blue ink of my grandmother's handwriting has now faded into the paper, like the varicose veins in her legs that I loved to look at. My father's letters are few and far between. His handwriting is neat and resembles mine as I get older. They're both dead now.
شکر
sugar, sugar,
sugar
sugar,
sugar
In the summer of 1990, I drove to Ottawa with my father on a rainy day. I had to renew my Iranian passport at the embassy. I was planning on going back to Iran for the summer after being absent for 10 years, and I couldn't go with a Canadian passport. I wore a rudimentary hijab, and my father, who was visiting from Iran, seemed very confident. At the embassy, they searched my purse before sending us to the 4th floor, when a woman wearing a blue hijab talked to me from behind a small window. She listened to me, took my passport and my Canadian immigration visa, and disappeared for a while. My father still looked confident. When she came back, the woman returned my passport through the window and said, "We won't offer you consular services. You're in Canada as a refugee." She was cold, confident, and serious. She looked very alien to me. I denied that I was a refugee and showed her my immigration visa and said, "I came here as an immigrant." She said, "We don't need your documents to know who you are. We have our own files on you." While she had her own files on me, all I had was an expired passport with the emblem of the Islamic Republic glued on top of the emblem of an expired regime. My last exit from Iran was stamped in my passport on September 10, 1980. The passport was then stamped on the same day in Madrid, Spain, then a week later in Lisbon, Portugal, and 3 years later, the last entry was in Canada. My daughter's photograph was stapled on the page for accompanying people. This was no longer a traveling document, but a novel, yet it had expired, not valid anymore. It belonged to the past and not the present or the future. The rain continued on the way back. My father was silent. There wasn't going to be a trip back for me that year or for any of the years to come. I drove us home to Montreal. My father couldn't drive because he didn't have a Canadian driver's license. I could drive, but I couldn't get consular services. Death consistently stands out as one of the more confusing and unresolved aspects of life in exile. It seems to happen in a space that is neither the there that we left behind, nor the here that we currently inhabit. Dying happens in abstraction. It is received as news, not witnessed as loss. To feel the pain, the news has to be remembered over and over again. One of the last photographs I received of my grandmother before she died is this image. My grandmother is standing in the garden of a vacation home my mother bought near the Caspian Sea after I left Iran. The dog standing next to my grandmother was adopted in those early years as well. My grandmother's house in Tehran as I remember it, was simple and bright and had comfortable furniture. In most of my memories of her, she's sitting on a green velvet armchair, reading a book with her glasses on and a cup of tea on the side table. She raised me. To understand her absence, I need to enter the house, see the empty armchair, the book left on the side table, the teacup untouched. How can I understand death on more than just a superficial level if I don't see the spaces the dead occupied and do not occupy any longer? The city, the alley, the house, the armchair. Don't we need continuity to be able to grasp its rupture? In this picture, my grandmother, who has passed away, is standing next to a dog I never saw in the garden of a house I never visited, which my mother sold a few years ago. Bahman was a tall and broad man with bushy eyebrows and a big smile. He told jokes about married life the night of our wedding, about learning how to open the door with your chin and close it with your bum when you get married, because you will be carrying bags of groceries when you get home for the rest of your life. He was my husband's cousin, and now he was related to me as well. I saw him every Thursday. The family gathered at my sister-in-law's apartment and played bridge around the dining table. Bahman was obsessed with bridge. He laughed and told jokes the whole time. A large and gentle presence. I didn't know how to play bridge. All this happened more than 30 years ago. They arrested him on March 18, 1992, and executed him shortly after. I hadn't seen him for 12 years. He and his wife Rosie had a son and a little daughter. The memorial for Bahman was at his brother-in-law's house in Philadelphia, a large house surrounded by a garden with tall trees. It was during the ceremony that I found out they had hanged him. Staring through the window at the Philadelphia garden, I wondered, how do you hang a large man like Bahman? What do you hang him from? What rope could hold him? Where did this take place? How did this happen? I thought the courtyard where Bahman was hanged will remember him for a long time, and so will the alley, the street, and the neighborhood. The tall trees that overlook that courtyard and the soil those trees grow their roots in will remember the large hanging man. I knew that the memory would seep through the soil and into the trees and into the streets throughout the land, and that the land will remember what they did to Bahman. I thought, I don't ever want to return to a land that has such nightmares buried in its soil. Here you are. I thought I'll never see you again. Look at me. Do you remember me? Let me see your face. It's been such a long time. Look at me. Do you remember me? Can you see me? It's been such a long time. I thought I'll never see you again. I know I went away, didn't write, didn't visit, couldn't. I thought I'll never see you again. I missed you. I missed you so much. Missed your beautiful face, the sound of your voice. Can you see me? I'm right here. Do you remember me? Do you remember my face? Did you miss me? It's been such a long time. I thought we'll never see each other again. I thought you had forgotten me. I thought I had forgotten you. I know I've changed. You've changed too. So much happened to you and me. I have so much to tell you. It was getting late. I've forgotten a lot. There are things I don't remember anymore. There are things I'm not sure about. It's been so long. I went so far. Where is this place? What is happening? What is this pain? Am I losing you again? Look at me. Don't turn your face away. I can't lose you, not again. Let me see your face, your beautiful face, the face I know. My face.
شکر شکن شوند همه طوطیان هند، زین قند پارسی که به بنگاله می رود.
Fuad was 4 when I left. He's now 34 and a violin teacher. He's my sister-in-law's son. We video chat sometimes. He once played a piece for me which I recorded. I then asked Fuad if he could move the camera around the room for me. They are still living in the same 9th floor apartment they had just bought 30 years ago when we left Iran. The residential tower they live in was the first to be ready of that series of towers. When we left, it was the only one there in a new neighborhood in the west of Tehran. Fuad took the mobile video camera and turned it around the room. The movement made the image more pixelated. He then moved toward the window and pushed the curtains away. In my memory, It took a long time for Fuad's hand to reach the curtain and push it to the side. In my memory, I wasn't breathing in those moments. The image was fuzzy at first and became clear as the camera became more steady. The early evening sky was clear, and there were several tall buildings in the distance. The windows were all lit, and I could barely see behind them. Below, I could see the tops of tall trees in the spaces between buildings. The landscape looked dense and green. The sun was going down, and the moon was visible in the blue sky, an in-between time of the day. What was there was what should have been there, and nothing was missing. There was no gap born of my absence. Would I have left my home 30 years ago if I knew that time and space would close down behind me? Had it been a real choice, perhaps I could answer this question. I read somewhere that Western civilization started when Don Quixote left his home to see the world. I wonder if he also thought he's going on a short trip.
Lay your head where my heart used to be, on the earth above me. Lay down in the green grass, remember when you loved me. Come closer, don't be shy. Stand beneath the rainy sky. The moon is over the rise. Think of me as a train goes by. Clear the thistles and brambles. Whisper, didn't he ramble? Now there's a bubble of